Hey, everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm incredibly excited. I have a guest on today. His name is Tony Maritato. He's a physical therapist, a private practice owner, and somebody that I have been binge watching for years now when it comes to YouTube content, physical therapy growth. And today we're talking about how to add digital products to your business. Tony, thanks so much for doing this episode with me.
Will, thanks so much for having me. I mean, same accolades back at you. Like, I follow you and Alex and all the things that you guys have done. I see the circles that you guys run in, and it's just so inspiring to see other clinicians out there that are doing so much more to really elevate the entire profession. So thank you.
It's my honor. I feel like it's been a wild ride. I think both of us, having been in we'll just call it the Facebook group circle
Sure.
for years now, of watching all the different groups that have come about and grown. And I couldn't agree more. And I think we're in this age, and the pandemic, of if anything, helped us realize just how we need to diversify our revenue sources. And I'm really excited. You have been working tremendously in the background on multiple things. You're a serial entrepreneur, which is part of the reason I wanted to have you on. And one of the things is you've been building YouTube channels and you've been adding digital products. And I want to dive into that in just a minute. But for anybody who's listening to this, Tony, who kind of wants to get some context on you, will you just give a little bit about your entrepreneurial background? You know, where did you when did you first start running businesses, and how long have you been running businesses?
Yeah, well, I'm 46 now, so I've probably been in business for like 40 years. I was totally that kid in the neighborhood that just was so fascinated by the idea that I could do something or find something and turn it into cash, And I never cared about the money itself. It was more the creative process. But for the audience here, I mean, just to give you some context, I was a Penn State grad back in 2000. I graduated with a bachelor's in 2000. But even before that, graduated high school in 93. And my family owned a piece of real estate that was being leased to a plant store, like landscaping plants. I never raised a plant. I couldn't keep a plant alive to save myself. But I didn't want to go to college after high school. I was so desperate to get into business. And I said, you know what? I'm going to take over this plant store because he was moving out. I had the chance to move in. That was one of my first real businesses, if we want to talk about that.
Yeah.
And I came in knowing nothing. I kept the team on. They taught me everything about it. 2 years into it, I was like, I hate plants. I can't do this. I'm not going to be in South Florida planting shrubs and raising, gardens. So that got me into Penn State. Got a kinesiology degree in 3.5 years. Fell in love with exercise, physiology, biomechanics, all of that. And I was like, this is what I want to do. And during that time, I always had a passion for martial arts, and I grew up in a dojo. And so that was a huge part of my life. But I was introduced to a physical therapist. Never met a physical therapist before, never had the need for it. My mom developed frozen shoulder associated with type 2 diabetes and a couple other issues. Fell in love with physical therapy. I was like, this is the perfect marriage between the physiology and the human performance stuff that I learned with real people, helping real people, not athletes, not, ultra high performers. So I did what most of us probably did. We were like, how do I open a physical therapy clinic? I wasn't a therapist.
Yeah.
This would have been 2000. I talked to a guy that was a senior manager at a hospital outpatient clinic I was volunteering at. It was like, well, you spend 5 years, you get a job. First, you become a therapist. Then you spend 5 years, you get a job, you learn the ins and outs, you make your connections with the referrals, and then you open your clinic. I was like, what? Are you crazy? No way. So I quit. I opened a personal training studio. 1 year later, I recruited a physical therapist because I wasn't one. And we opened a second location, third location. She convinced me to go back to school, get my master's in physical therapy, which I did. We decided to get married. We opened two more locations. So at our largest,
Yeah.
we had 5 clinics across 2 states. We had a team of clinical staff and admin staff, OT and PT on board. We learned how to, do everything associated with the business. We learned how to create a business and not more jobs for us. And then we said, you know what? We want kids. We want a life. We don't want to be in the clinic 24/7. And so that's where then we started to consolidate, downsize. We sold a clinic. We let 2 clinics go where those therapists opened their own clinics in the same location. And now we live the life that we had hoped. We wanted to be home with our kids when they're young. I'm home right now. I just came out of the clinic. I saw a patient this morning, so I still have a hand in patient care, but we have the time freedom. My wife is full-time stay-at-home mom. It's PTO and boosters and all the fun stuff moms get to do. I'm going to pick up the boys, after school, and we're going to go to little league practice. And like, that's where I want to focus my time. I don't need more money. I don't need nicer cars. I don't need a better house. I want time with my kids, because that's only there for when it's there. And then when it's done, I can jump back into business when I need to. That's my story.
I love it. I love it. And that's so true. I'm watching my nephew grow up from afar, and it's crazy how fast just time is flying.
Yeah.
And so I can totally relate to that. And I think what's really cool, and you bring up tons of stuff we could talk about and way more in depth, which is like just your perspective. And we've seen this in the Facebook groups that we're involved in, where you bring the perspective of like, hey, if you want to be a practice owner, you actually don't even need to be a physical therapist. Like, you need to understand the business of physical therapy. Now, could there be an added benefit of you being a therapist? Sure, but you don't have to be. And it certainly doesn't require you to go treat patients for 5 years to understand how to run a physical therapy business, right? It's a business, and it's a system that runs. And we'll put that on the side for today, because I think what's really fascinating, and why I wanted to bring you on originally, Tony, is obviously you've been building incredible businesses, and originally all brick and mortar, correct? Like no digital products
Right.
back in the day when you were starting out.
Yeah. All
Was that
brick
even
and
a
mortar.
thing? Like early
No,
2000s?
not at
Yeah.
all. I mean, you're talking pre-Facebook, you're talking pre-iPhone, iPad. None of that stuff existed. So when we
Yeah.
started, I share this story just to give you context of how green we were. I thought, I'm going to open a little personal training studio, eventually became a physical therapy clinic. I'm going to hang business cards in the sandwich shop, and there was going to be a line of clients outside my window waiting to sign up, and of course, none of that happened. We would go across the street because we didn't want to buy a fax machine, and we would get fax plans of care at the UPS store across the street. Like, this is where we came from. And to see how quickly, I mean, we're only talking 20 years. In 2 decades, it is a completely different world. Yet I continue to see therapists trying to use business models that were successful then in today's economy. It's just never going to happen.
It's to be honest, Tony, it's one of my favorite things about you. I don't know if I get to tell you this enough, but I just love how adaptive you are. Like, you don't, I don't know, maybe there are emotions tied to it, but I always see you just like, oh, this is the direction that could go. I see an opportunity, and you just throw yourself in and you learn. I think it's a great lesson for anyone who's watching this. You already had successful brick and mortar businesses. You could have just said, well, we're just going to continue doing it the way we've always done it, and we're just going to, grind that to a pulp to the best we can. But you've always had, from as long as I've known you, a mindset of, great, how do we take advantage of what's happening? How do we learn? How do we get better? How do we adapt? And I think it's still a fairly rare trait. And so I just want to commend you on that. I know for you, it's probably just normal in how you are, but I think it's an exception to the rule. And so first off, thank you for setting that tone and your mindset. It's worn off on me tremendously. And anytime I see someone who's older, more experienced, whatever we want to say, and I still see them constantly testing things, constantly diving in, I realize, wow, I have so much more to learn. I have so much more to keep going into. And so thank you for that. And I want to ask, when did the idea of digital products come into your line of work, as especially thinking, we come from the physical therapy background, very physical in the name, very hands-on, person to person. When did the idea, when did it even start to spark in your mind of, maybe we should start looking into the digital side of productizing what we do?
I think there's always that need to productize or systemize a service. We only have so many minutes in the day. We can only touch so many people. We realized early on, I was waking up to see clients at 5 a.m. who were realtors who wanted to get their day started. And then I was seeing clients at 7 p.m. And I was like, I can't do this. This isn't sustainable. How do I clone myself? And therapists who are watching this are thinking the same thing. You realize that you have a gift, you have something special. Clients want to hire you. They don't necessarily hire somebody else. And so how do you clone yourself? And back in the day, it was all about creating a system that allowed me to hire personal trainers and massage therapists and other human versions of me, But now with technology being so incredibly effective, so incredibly inexpensive, I was like, well, wait a minute. If I'm going to answer this question for you today, why don't I just record that and then put that out on a platform that I can sell access to for 7 billion other people that might eventually have this same question? You know, it makes no sense to reinvent the wheel every single time that I'm doing this. And ironically, like as the result, I don't have to worry about counting pennies treating patients because I've got these other things that are out there bringing money in, which allows me to do what I love without the pressure of being paid for it. You know, I share this all the time. I love cooking. I cook every meal every single day. We go out to dinner like 3 times a year: my birthday, my wife's birthday, and our anniversary. Outside of that, I cook everything. But if you want me to hate cooking, make me open a restaurant and I will hate cooking. You know, but as therapists, that's what we do. We love therapy and then we go open a clinic and then it turns sour. Having these digital products, having ways to scale and leverage my time infinitely is what allows me to protect the thing that I love, protect the patient care, protect that kernel of passion that now I treat you because I want to treat you. I make decisions for you based on what you really need, not based on can I pay my mortgage, can I pay my kids' tuition, stuff like that. So the idea has been around forever. It's
Yeah.
just technology now has made it so accessible to anybody.
Yeah. And you make great points. It's relatively inexpensive. Even the fact to, if you have a computer, which most people have computers, obviously I recognize there's some people out there who might not, but you could even go to a library and access a computer. You can get Zoom is, I think, technically free to just record onto your computer. You can be making videos, training stuff, training modules, things like that. And so we really don't have an excuse. Obviously, we're talking to the vast majority of people. You don't have an excuse to not be able to do something like this, even the kind of recording we're doing.
Right.
And I'd kind of love to take two paths with you, Tony. One is
Yeah.
service providers who already have a business. So business owners, small business owners in particular, they already have an in-person business. They have whether it's a brick and mortar or maybe they're renting space out of somewhere, and they're already we'll just say relatively established, meaning they've got a relative client customer flow coming in. And maybe they're looking at, well, we either have max capacity and they face a situation which is we'd have to hire or buy a bigger space, or maybe become more efficient with the time we're using and the space that we have, or they have this opportunity to leverage digital goods. I'd love to kind of take us through your idea of, hey, if you already have an existing client base, customer base, you have a way, typically that means you already have some way of generating leads into your business and some type of sales process. How have you been able to do this into your physical therapy practice business to leverage digital goods? And could you give us an example of, well, your own example? And then how do you feel like other businesses that are similar in service-based businesses could be adding digital products into their sales process as they're taking sort of customers in as leads?
Yeah, if you have a business, you have pain points. We all have pain points. We all have frustrations. And I'm a big believer that if I can solve my problems, that solution is probably applicable to other people as well. So when I look at, and I posted last night on Facebook on my personal profile, I was like, how can we reduce the friction of getting a patient in the door to the point that when I bought a pizza last night from Domino's, I wasn't even on an app, but it was so incredible to me that I go to the website, I can place my order, I can find the discounts. It was frictionless. And so what I did in my clinic, there's things that we as business owners hold as, they're important to us. For me, I never wanted my patients filling out paperwork. Literally, when a patient walks in my door, from the time that I'm face to face, it's one signature and we're going. They don't sit in a reception chair or anything. So that piece of the experience, I wanted a way to make that frictionless, seamless. And I said, well, in fact, when I first met Alex, he sent me a video greeting and I was like, this is amazing. Nobody's ever done this. So I take these little ideas, I systemize it into eliminating the problems that I have. And I look at, okay, now is there tangible value in something like this? Is it just a nice to have, or is it a necessity that's going to make my business better? So home exercise programs, that's been a huge topic. Everybody's looking for the best platform and the best thing. And I'm like, look, guys, you realize third-party payers don't pay you to create the exercise program. Though they want you to teach the exercises. If you're going to scribble a stick figure on a piece of paper, give it away for free. But like, I will grab my phone with the patient, I'll record 3 things. I'll put it into the simplest way to create your first digital product. I'll record those 3 things, I'll pop it into an email, and I can sell that email. That email now contains a digital product, a virtual asset. I was paid to create it. You know, you have talked about don't create a course until somebody pays for you to create that course. This is a perfect example. I was paid to create that little mini digital asset that now I'm going to send to that client in an email. It's going to improve the patient experience. It's going to reduce my time outside of the face-to-face that I'm selling. And it's just going to kind of grease the wheels a little bit to make it a frictionless environment. Plus, now I realized, hey, you know, I can put an affiliate link in there for a product that I might recommend that I genuinely believe in. I might drop in a link for a Google review that I need this person to, you know, fill out for me. I can include the payment links so that I'm not processing credit cards and losing valuable time to run a payment. There are so many things now that I can put into that. And it's something that I'm doing anyway. I'm already creating a home exercise program.
Yeah.
All I'm doing is I'm not documenting it. I didn't flip on the camera and hit record. That's it. So for the listeners out here, you look at the things you're doing during the day, and to take a line from Gary Vee, don't think of creating videos. Don't think you have to be a YouTuber. You flip the phone on and you hit record. I remember some of the first things that I recorded. I would put the camera on me. I'd have my real patient sitting in the chair in front of me. I would record my response answering the patient's question. For example, do I use heat or ice on low back pain? And that would be my first digital product, you know, and there's value to that because nobody out there has seen a physical therapist actually answer that question. If they go to YouTube, I let the advertisers pay me for that content. If they come to me directly, I can sell it to them, you know, through any of my platforms. So I'm sorry, I got way off track, but let's go back to it.
Yeah.
It's solving your own problems.
Yeah. And I think that really speaks to how do you view, you know, how do you create your own digital product? And I think so many people get so stuck, right? Well, I need to know everything about a topic to ever consider creating a digital product. We've seen this, right? Where somebody spends, and no joke, years creating a training program or something. And then no one falls on deaf ears. No one ever sees it. And you know, and they get so obsessed in the creation part, which can be wonderful, assuming there's demand, or if it's just for your pleasure and you really want to enjoy creating the thing. But I'm curious, Tony, for you. So that was awesome. Actually, by the way, that was perfect for how do you start thinking about what makes sense to even create? And I think the idea of selling an email is mind blowing to, I think, probably most people, and even myself. Like, what? I could charge money to send that email. But if you had said to put in a Google Drive folder, I would have been like, oh yeah, I would do that. But I didn't think about just an email, even one less point of friction. Why does it need to be in a Google Drive folder? Just put it in the email. So that was awesome. I guess I'd be curious for you and your service-based physical business, brick and mortar business. How have you guys incorporated digital products to either be additional value to current clients, or maybe even as an alternative to an in-person type of service that you might offer? Have you guys done that? And how are you thinking about it? And if you don't, how would you be thinking about that as a business owner?
I think we as clinicians, you know, we evolve, right? I am not the same therapist today that I was 10 years ago, and I'm not the same therapist then that I was 20 years ago when we started. So when I look at this, I'm like, where's the real value in what I'm delivering? Certainly our clinical brain, our experience, our decision-making, looking at the big picture, nobody does that kind of stuff. But I'm like, do I really need to monetize me sitting there counting reps? Is there a better way for me to motivate and elicit a change response in my client? Because my client knows what to do. They don't know how to get themselves to do it. And while I might not be the expert in that, I could go to somebody like James Cleary, who wrote Atomic Habits. I could borrow from his program or just take his program, sell the book, sell the package, sell the transformation, and do it all on a digital platform that allows me to interact one to many instead of one to one. But of course, like we see, there needs to be that kind of value ladder. There needs to be offers for different price points. So maybe I've got somebody who just wants a one-time session and then show me what to do and let me do it. Like if I was the client, I would, and I value physical therapy, I would never go to a physical therapist because I don't want 60 minutes of your full attention. That's not what I'm there for. If you can give me a solution in 10 minutes, I'll pay you three times more than if it's going to take me 60 minutes, right? That's the client that I am. And so I wanted to create something for that client. And then separately, I wanted to create something for the client who just wants to come and socialize and have a good time and do a little bit of exercise, but maybe get the socialization in. And so that's where, like in the clinic, of course, you said it, COVID accelerated 10 years worth of progress and compressed it into 12 months. People who thought I would never do Zoom, I would never do that, or doing it with friends and family and all of that. And I've seen some of the greatest minds out there say this is what happens. Technology and everything advances get compressed when we face a challenge like this. And so with that, I look at who's doing it correctly. I don't think you can take the previous model of face-to-face in person and try to just transfer it to a digital platform. But I think what it did was it forced us to realize, hey, wait a minute. I was taking advice back to Henry Ford. If I asked my customer what they wanted, they'd say faster horses. I was taking advice from the people that were buying what I was selling. I completely ignored the rest of the population. And so now you guys know, like, and I get no kickback from this. You can set up a free Clarity account, clarity.fm. I get frequent calls from people who don't want to see me, don't want me to touch them. They just want to ask me a couple questions and they're willing to pay for it, and that is where I realized there's this entire demographic out there that would never come see you in person, but maybe they would hire you for these other electronic platforms. And this goes back to, I don't know if you even remember Joe Polish and some of the guys that came out of direct response marketing. Yep. They used to have automated phone numbers and you would call and you'd get a message. Yeah. And I was like, why would anybody just want to listen to a recorded message? Well, it's because the person listening to the message doesn't have the pressure of another human being on the other side, and before like chatbots and autoresponders and all that stuff, you would record a message that somebody would call on a traditional analog phone to listen to basically your commercial. Yeah. And you explaining what you were doing. Now, fast forward, that's YouTube and all the other technologies, but same concepts. I get the benefit of being an old head in this world. I see the stuff that they used to do, and I just translate it forward into where we are today.
Yeah. You make some really great points. I think the ease of access as well, of just people are willing to pay for access. I think how many people live in rural areas that it doesn't have to be rural, but areas where there's just really poor quality care. Maybe there are service providers locally, but they're not really good. And if before the internet, you just kind of were stuck with whoever was in a certain range that you'd be willing to go to. And now, I could say, hey, like, I'd like to speak to my vet. I was just thinking the other day, if my dog got sick at 2 a.m., well, I know that going to the emergency vet is already a $750+ bill, regardless, whatever, like it's going to happen. And if I could pay someone $75 just to have a chat with a vet over text or whatever. Yeah. Oh my goodness. I'd be so thrilled, because we know 9 out of 10 times I go to the emergency vet, they say, hey, we just gave her some IVs and she should stop throwing up in, 24 hours. And you're like, oh, if I just waited, but I was nervous. I didn't know. I needed somebody to talk to. If I just had an expert to help guide me through this, would have been able to do it. And so I think just having that access is huge too.
And, I always go back to, real quick, go back to, I'm the PT, my wife's a PT, we're PTs in the family, right? My nephew sprains an ankle, 11 o'clock at night. They're going to call me just to get peace of mind. Something's going on. They're going to call me. I've got somebody in Boston that's getting ready for surgery, and they just want to run a couple ideas by me. There are countless families that don't have a PT in the family and don't want an initial evaluation and don't want to get a referral and go through all that. And you're not providing care, that you're not providing medical advice. They're calling you, they're asking for information. And what you're doing is you're simply saying, look, this is what you can expect. This is what typically happens. You're providing the education and the peace of mind,
Mm.
but I think we've been so conditioned and fearful. I mean, we're such a fearful profession in general, fearful of regulation, fearful of compliance, fearful of all of these things, that we need to embrace a little bit of confidence and be like, wait, I can do this. There's plenty of other people doing this. Why can't I do this?
Yeah. I'm, you know me, I'm completely risk tolerant. I totally agree. And I think we need
Sure.
more people to be risk tolerant, to be able to do that for our particular profession. Um, so I wanted to, Tony, thanks for answering that first route of going down. Hey, you already have an existing business. How do you add a digital product in? Tony broke it down just as a summary real quick. First thing is, what are the things that you're constantly repeating over and over again that would apply to more than one person? And I would argue, and I think Tony would probably agree with me, that most of the things you do are applicable to more than one person, especially if you find yourself repeating it. That inherently means that somebody's asking the same question or relatively the same question. You're answering it the same way. So record that, save those things, use those as digital assets to be able to then offer to sell to your clients. And then two, look at the problems that you're solving and how can you use digital products to be able to solve. Tony talked about a couple of things, like also adding in affiliate links as additional sources of revenue to create offers and even better offers that you already have. Say, for example, adding in accountability programs like Tony was talking about, or adding a clarity.fm to be able to maybe get the same amount of value for less time to give someone peace of mind. So those are some really cool things. Thank you, Tony, for breaking that part down. And I want to go the second route because you've done the second route as well. And this is, I think, where a lot of people get super excited. I think we've seen a lot of people get into this world of, oh my gosh, digital products can be my way to passive income and I'll never have to work again. And I kind of want to break down some realities of that with you, because you've gone from having a brick and mortar practice to then growing YouTube channels from pretty much nothing, right? Like there was no inherent audience that were coming in. You just started making YouTube videos. Talk us about some of the, I guess I would love to know your journey of, hey, I don't have an audience. I'm going to end up, one, did you have in mind that you would make digital products off of an audience, or were you just starting out to create content for yourself?
I would say I was using YouTube just to reach out and kind of chronicle, document, certain things that were frustrating to me. And I think that's what resonated with the audience.
Yeah.
Is I would look at something that all the other therapists were doing and be like, why are they still doing this? This makes no sense to me. It was frustrating. The one that really caught fire and kind of launched the first channel was a video about sleep after a total knee replacement. And I thought, okay, I understand the context behind a physician or a therapist telling a patient they have to sleep on their back, they have to keep the leg elevated and completely straight. I get it. I know what you're trying to do, but the reality is there are so many. I don't know the last client that had a knee replacement that didn't also have spinal stenosis or sleep apnea or multiple other complexities that could not sleep on their back. And I would see these clients suffering to try and comply with the physician's recommendation. Ice was another one. There were clients that were so hypersensitive to cryotherapy, yet the doc said I have to ice it, and they were forcing themselves, agonizing over using ice 4 times a day. Like, this stuff makes no sense. So I started to put out content just saying, look, here's the background, here's the situation, you do what feels best to you, but I want you to understand that there are other options. This is why they want you to do it, but you can also do this or that. If you have full extension, sleep however you want. Sleep is more important than worrying about some arbitrary guideline, And so what happened with that channel? Now, that channel existed well over, I think I started in 2003. It was dead for like 17, 18 years. And then all of a sudden, one of those videos, the sleep video, started to gain traction. That boosted and lifted other videos that I had just randomly threw up there. I did the stuff that everybody else does. I recorded all these 30-second videos and junky stuff that nobody's looking for. But right about the same time, that first video I found all of a sudden had like 50, 60,000 views. I had also started to understand, okay, wait a minute, these algorithms are really sophisticated. They really understand and want to serve what the client is looking for. So search content, search intent is what they're looking for. And then I just started to answer questions that Google told me people wanted the answer to. And that's where I got into, the more modern versions of keyword research and SEO and all of this kind of stuff. And I said, why am I forcing my ideas out there when people are desperately seeking answers to the questions? Google's telling me this is what they need information on. So that's what I did. I kept it super simple. I never thought of a new idea. I went straight to Google. People also asked, and I answered those questions. And those videos gained traction. And then I started the Learn Medicare Billing channel, thinking, well, therapists are desperate. They need information. And the same thing, I answered specific questions. How do I get an MPI? How do I apply to Medicare? And that gained traction. And then I did it a third time, and I went to a shoulder channel. I said, there are massively successful shoulder videos out there. I want to bring my unique experience into the world of shoulder rehab because I do things a little different. And so what we saw, and I've shared this in videos, like dead. I mean, I put up 23, 24 videos, dead for 6 months, and then one caught fire. And that one boosted up to like, I think it's got 16,000 views right now. And with it, it carried the other videos along. And of course, during that time, I'm learning the algorithm. I'm understanding what YouTube does. I'm looking at the real experts that are out there. I'm no expert. And I'm seeing the lessons that they're sharing and what works for them and understanding that, well, wait a minute, if I can answer this, and it was another sleep question. Why does the number one reason my shoulder hurts more at night? And then I leverage that to, okay, here are some suggested sleep positions that reduce compression on the shoulder. Here's an explainer about what the rotator cuff, what the rotary cuff actually is. Here's information about, why you have point tenderness. And we all have these stories from the clinic. Like the clinic and patient care should never be charged for, because that is where I'm getting all of my information for YouTube and my digital courses and all the other stuff. My dream is that I could have a clinic totally for free. Patients can come in. I don't charge them a single dime because they're my content generators. That is where the information and ideas come from. And then I let the YouTube ad revenue pay the bills. I let the other people who aren't with me pay for access. And that's where the money comes from, because that's infinitely scalable. There's 7 billion people that want that information, as opposed to putting that whole cost on the shoulders of one human.
Yeah. Yeah. You make some great points. And I think a couple of things come to mind as you mentioned those things. The first thing was the consistency you have of 23, 24 videos and dead channel, right? I think most people, normal humans, they're like, I'm done, right? I did 23, 24 videos, 6 months, don't see results. As we know, with patients that we work with, 6 months and no results, most people are like, this doesn't work. I'm done. I'm out, right? I'm not going to do this anymore. And if you have just a few more minutes, Tony, I'd love to ask you a few questions about, because I think a lot of people want to create digital products. They see the power of it. They want to do it. And then they face the reality of, I don't have an audience. I don't have anyone who's contacting me saying this. And so they spend all this time creating the product, when my personal philosophy and belief is, go spend that time, precious time that you could be doing that, to actually creating useful free content to draw in people to want to learn more about you. And I'd love to just dive into a minute about your process behind this, because you've gone from no subscribers, no followers, to building multiple monetized channels now. What's been your thinking every time you start? Like, or maybe the first time you started, and how do you approach it now? If say someone's looking at this and going, I'm not trying to make $1 million a year on a YouTube channel, but I'd like to, I don't know, maybe pay my rent. And I have most people are going to say, oh, I could do a year doing that. We'll be real. Most people will probably do it for 30 days and then quit. But if somebody really has that like year-long mindset, what advice would you have to them of getting started? Are there tools that you use? Is there a mindset that you recommend they adopt? How do you recommend someone go about starting?
And to give context, because I think it's so important to know information about where, my history comes from in this. So I've got a bunch of YouTube channels, but I've got 3 channels that are my primary channels. My knee replacement channel is at like 13,000 subscribers. So it's not 100,000 subscribers, but it's gaining about 800 subscribers, 900 a month. That channel has been paying me $1,000 a month in ad revenue. So that, put some fuel in the fire. I've got my Learn Medicare, which is getting close to 3,000 subscribers and pays me about 150 to 200 bucks a month in ad revenue, plus about $200 a month in Amazon affiliate commissions. And then I've got my shoulder channel that's not monetized yet, but it's getting close, and so you said it. How do you keep yourself from quitting? How do you keep yourself from giving up? Seth Godin has some great information out there about that. I know me. I know that I need that satisfaction of seeing these little wins coming in. So that's why I'm spread so thin. That's why I do YouTube and I do Udemy and I do digital courses and I do consulting, because I need to have something to motivate me and keep me going. So I understand that about myself. I know my wife, she will buckle down. She'll pick one topic. She'll blow me out of the water, and she will be so consistent for decades, because that's in her nature. I'm not like that. I need variety. I need to do a bunch of stuff. But back to my website, my clinical website, which I think is interesting too. It's totaltherapysolutions.com. It went from 2003 to 2019 with like zero traffic. And I've had multiple iterations, and I've been a web designer, and I've used WordPress and all that stuff forever. Again, it wasn't until I realized the power of answering a question that Google tells me people are looking for. Over the last 12 months, I just ran these numbers last night. We went from like 20 page views a day. We're upwards. I think yesterday we were at like 1,500 page views a day. I've had 144,000 page views this year, but it's like a slope that just keeps going up, And so the idea is, if you want to build that audience, and the audience is where the value is, the audience is where, you launch anything to a hungry audience and they're going to buy it. It's the consistency, it's answering those questions. And ironically, we're therapists. We love answering questions. We love helping people. We hate charging for it, but we love giving it away for free. So like, in my mind, I would think every therapist would be doing this nonstop. We couldn't pull them away from it. But there's insecurities. I was the same way. Like, I'd look at that little black dot and I'd get nervous and my lips would get tight and I'd feel the spit in my mouth. And it took years. I mean, again, context. I've got over 650 public videos on one of my channels, 450 on another channel, several thousand that never made it public, So I'm doing this every day. I'm doing reps every single day. But you go out there, you answer a question. I had a relative ask me a question about her knee. She thinks she has a meniscus tear, but they're telling her it's hamstring. I hit record. I grab my son. I go through a physical exam on my son, explaining how I differentiate meniscus versus, hamstring versus referred pain from a sciatic nerve or something. And that was a piece of content. And that was a specific piece of content for a specific human being that asked me that question. And I guarantee there's more human beings out there asking the same question. Any opportunity I get, I document what it is that I'm doing, saying, thinking, if I believe it's going to add value to somebody else, and I don't care. I don't care if I get paid for it. I don't care if the money comes, because eventually the money will come. And that's where, again, we start to look creatively at what we're doing. We're like, okay, I could charge this one person $100 for an hour, or $300 for an hour, or $500 for an hour. Yep. But I'm never going to get any more than that $500 for that hour of my time. And it's going to be private to that person. Whereas if I documented that hour, I could monetize it for $10 to an infinite number of people and make money on that hour of time for the next 10 years. I recorded a course on Udemy. Udemy is a great platform for the right content producer. They have an audience. YouTube has an audience. When I was doing stuff on ClickFunnels, I had to bring the audience. I didn't have an audience. So it failed, it flopped, it went under. But the idea is, I created that course on Udemy teaching therapists how to enroll in Medicare. I knew that was a pain point. I knew they were frustrated. It's selling for like 10 to $20, depending on when you buy it. But I spent an hour recording the content. I spend a second hour uploading the content, and it's paid over $1,000 in the last 12 months and continues to sell without me doing anything.
Yeah.
So that's really where we go back to. We understand the benefit of compound interest. We understand the benefit of investing. This is the same thing. It's just in these digital assets, digital products, instead of actual tangible real estate. But it really is the new frontier. It's the new kind of gold rush that is still early in the development. I shared last night. I went to Udemy. Udemy has 183,000 published courses as of this year. Wow. When I searched all the courses in the category of physical therapy, 43 or 44, something like that. All the courses in the category of occupational therapy, it was 30. And speech language pathology, it was like 28 or something. I mean, think of that, And so even if we took the knowledge and information that we have and we said, okay, the general public doesn't want it, we could help the next generation of clinicians infinitely more than anything they could possibly get in school by simply sharing and I'm not asking, but what are your 3 best tips for a new grad who is dealing with a difficult patient, right? What are the 3 best tips for a new grad who needs to document for this particular diagnosis for an evaluation? There is so much. When I see the alternative healthcare career group, I'm like, there is countless decades of knowledge and information in the skulls of these humans that is going to die with them because they don't know how to get it out, put it on a platform, and allow people to pay them for it. And it's sad because there's so much human suffering going on when so much of it could potentially be relieved if we could just access that information.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, wow, that's mind blowing about Udemy of the lack of PT, OT, speech courses. And if you're listening to this in a different industry, you should go look at Udemy, maybe in your service type of industry or whatever you're in. It might be a really underserved area for digital products or digital courses. So Tony, this has been absolutely phenomenal. I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your day to help us with this. If anyone is interested in checking out your YouTube channels or finding you, where's a good place that they can do that? I'll obviously put links below in the description. Where would be the best place to go learn about you and the things that you're doing?
Well, I'm over 40, so go to Facebook, look me up by Anthony Maritato, but call me Tony. Reach out to me, message me. You won't see a lot of my content because it is private in a list. So anytime somebody friends me, if you're a clinician, I put you on a clinician list and you get to see all of my unbiased thoughts about where I think the profession is going. And I mean, just my YouTube channels, totaltherapysolutions.com or Learn Medicare, any of that stuff is fine. But I have lots of time and I love talking to clinicians because just like I said, patients are my content producers. They generate my ideas and they help me help other people. Therapists with problems are no different. I just talked to an amazing therapist last night. She's working on building her practice. She became a Medicare provider. She's got over $20,000 in claims that can't get paid because she doesn't understand just 1 or 2 little technical things. And so we jumped on a Zoom session today, and I think we got her claim paid. And so it's fascinating that literally in 5 minutes, because I've got 21 years behind me, in 5 minutes, I can fix a problem that she's been dealing with for the last couple months, So whatever you guys need, I'm always available.
Awesome. Well, Tony, we really appreciate it. And guys, if you're looking to get into the digital product world, I can't recommend following Tony enough, especially on, he's got a really cool Facebook group. Tony, what's the name of the Facebook group that you have that does kind of about YouTube and e-products, e-learning?
So I think the name is eCourse. One word, eCourse Live. If you look that up, you'll find the Facebook group. And
Cool. I'll put the link to that in the description. I highly recommend you joining that group as well. If you're not in the PT world or healthcare world and you want to learn about sort of what Tony does with YouTube and digital courses, really cool group. And he puts amazing content out. So Tony, thank you again so much for hopping on the channel. And guys, we'll see you on the next episode.